Okay, welcome. It's always strange to have a long.
Добро пожаловать. Очень странно, что вы все сидите так как-то в одной линии. Мне было приятнее бы работать, если бы комната была более широкая, но я думаю, что ничего менять мы уже не можем. Мы здесь стоим в расписании, поэтому добро пожаловать на мою презентацию. У нас будет с вами примерно полтора часа. Мы будем работать без перерыва. И мы будем говорить о требованиях к тестировщикам в контексте того, что если вы являетесь тестировщиком, вам будет это понятно. Я думаю, если у вас будет понимание требований, то вам будет легче делать свою работу. Это не какой-то такой студенческий курс. Давайте, может быть, подождем еще пару минут, смотрю, что люди подтягиваются потихонечку. Или начнем, как вы считаете? Я потом заново начну. Доброе утро всем, кто подошел к нам. Ладно, это все шутки, конечно. В общем, это не полноценный курс, но я просто дам вам какие-то определенные подсказки, которые можно принимать во внимание в вашей работе. Итак, те, кто не был на моих презентациях вчера, хочу сказать, что меня зовут Эрик van Veenendaal. Можете называть меня просто Эрик или как-то по-другому, как вам нравится. Буквально несколько слов обо мне. На самом деле даже не так важны, они можете поискать, загуглить в интернете. Возможно, вы слышали вот о такой ситуации. Со мной такое, во всяком случае, происходило. Я тестировщик, и вас, как тестировщика, просят посмотреть требования для ваших кейсов тестирования. И зачастую вам они просто не нравятся. И я обычно говорила, я не могу это тестировать, мне нужно что-то получше. Здесь все непонятно. И человек, у которого есть такие требования, он ко мне подошел и сказал, так, подожди, стоп, не переживай, я знаю, о чем ты говоришь, все в порядке. Но объясни, пожалуйста.
And that's a fair question to ask, right? And at the time, my answer was like, smart, because I knew that something like smart, I heard about it. And then I heard invest, which is an agile context, same thing as smart. Basically, I had no clue. Okay, we're filling up, good. So the problem was, I was commenting on something. And when the other person said, but what you really want, I actually did not have an answer. So what the requirements engineer, actually the business analyst said, well, maybe we should start a project together and try to define what you actually need. So what are the requirements for requirements, if you want? This is how I got involved. This happened quite a long time ago already in requirements engineering. And I think many testers, I guess also in Belarus, have experienced this. I mean, you are commenting on something, you are not happy, but when you're asked, so what is it that you really need? There's not a real answer. So what I'm trying to give you this morning is we're going to do some exercises, as you will see, but also I'm giving you some tips where to look for and provide better answers, basically. Because if you think about it, requirements is for us, and us being testers, very, very, very important. Because what happens is if we do risk analysis, if we do test design, everything we do is based, or should be, based on requirements. And by the way, when I say requirements, to me, user stories are also requirements, of course. Just a different format, make sure. We again meaning testers, are involved in requirements reviews. And the question is, this is a difficult question to answer as always, what level of quality is good enough, is acceptable? Because you cannot say, you have to describe everything to details. So what level of detail do you want? What level of quality do you want? You recognize this? Yeah? Because this is things which I always think is very difficult. And sometimes, and I was talking to someone yesterday actually in the break, he said, we don't have requirements, but we talk to the business, and then we write test designs, and then the test designs become requirements. Is that allowed? Well, it may not be the best thing, but sometimes that's a solution. Because then the test designs more or less document what the system does. And again, we are involved in that. And of course, if you are in Agile, and I guess many of you are working in a sort of Agile context, but if you are doing Agile, and you're working in Scrum teams, you should be involved in what I call grooming or refinement sessions. And that means we are also involved even in defining requirements, in elaborating requirements, in writing acceptance criteria. So again, whatever you think, we being the testers, have a major interest in requirements. Which brings me to a picture you see nowadays very often. I think the tester is becoming what they call a T-shaped tester. I'm getting more popular all the time. Okay. Well, at least people are coming in. If that's being popular, I don't know. But what it means is that, of course, as a tester, you need to understand testing. That's expected, goes without saying, right? You know about test design techniques, about product risk analysis, about defect management, about all these things which are related to testing. Test automation. That's for sure. However, if you're working in an Agile context, in an Agile team, you are expected to work in a team and to help other people as well. So I think today, as a tester, it's deep knowledge on testing, but also we want people to say, hey, I work with the product owners, so I need some domain knowledge. I need to be trained I'm working in the medical industry, I want to understand what my machine does, how it's operated. Because if you understand that better, you are able to write better test cases. You are, as I said already, working together with product owners, with other people, to write requirements, to review requirements, to elaborate them, acceptance criteria. That means you need to have some basic understanding of requirements engineering. You are working with developers. You are asked to review unit tests. That means you should be able to read some code. So from a, I would say, traditional tester, we are moving away and we are expecting more from a tester today than we did, let's say, 5 years ago. Which I think is good because it's challenging, it's nice. I love testing, but there are other things as well that are nice to hear. But it does mean that testers should also understand or have a basic understanding of requirements engineering. And I'm not going to say that this 1.5 hour we're going to spend on requirements engineering is all that it takes. That's not possible. But hopefully it gets you thinking, hey, these are things I should look into. I also run classes on requirements engineering, training on requirements engineering. And more often I see testers coming to a training class to say, I'm involved in this, I need to know more. So if you leave later on and think, I've learned a few things, but the main thing I've learned is I need to get more knowledge on requirements engineering, I'm happy, okay? And I just put a green sticker on there and I'm happy too, okay? So this is the tester, I would say, of today. What are we going to do? The There'll be about 30 minutes of, I would say, some basic introduction to requirements engineering. Hopefully maximum 30 minutes. Then there will be 2 exercises, which you will be asked to do. One is, what do you think are good requirements? A very open question, which you work with a team, the 3 of you. You're also asked to review some requirements, and I'm pretty sure you can do that very well, because you are a tester, so you can find defects, okay? And based on what we've learned over there, we will take a next step and say, okay, you've now done this, you've reviewed requirements, so what will be a step afterwards? So we'll look at last 30 minutes about what are ideas for good requirements, some options, some examples, and I will give you 6, 7 ideas to take away. Okay? You are all in the right room? You will all stay? Yeah? Okay, good. Or not good, I don't know. Introduction. Of course, we know this one. The challenge is, and this is really a challenge, is to define somehow, and I put completely to brackets because you can never be complete. And the same with unambiguous. You will never be totally unambiguous. My mother will not understand the requirements, as an example. Yeah? So there's always a level of, if you want, unambiguously. But we want to define something up front, as clear as possible, as complete as possible, as unambiguously as possible. Because if we don't have requirements, how can we make a project plan? How can we make decisions on which one is more important? How can we do development? How can we do testing? I mean, everything depends on requirements. Everything. This is to some extent, it's strange that requirements engineering is not the most important topic in IT. Because having good requirements, doing good requirements engineering is actually the basis for everything. We can do great testing and we will be the best in testing in our company, but if the requirements are wrong, we are testing the wrong system. Right? So this is very, very important. An interesting one from the Standish group. I don't know if you can read it all on the back. It's very far, but yeah. But it says, what are reasons for project success or project failure? And there's a few things he say, hey, lack of user input. It has to do with requirement engineering. Doing interviews, doing brainstorming sessions, doing use case sessions. Incomplete requirement specifications. Changing requirement specifications. How do you manage those? Have you got a process for that? Unclear objectives. Unrealistic expectations. That is all in the area of requirement engineering. In fact, if you add these together, 50% almost of the reasons why projects fail can be traced back to requirement engineering. Think about that. I know management wants you to do testing and wants you to do development because that means you're making progress. But spending more time on requirement engineering is usually pays off in having a more successful project. The idea here is that this is the idea of requirements engineering is there is a, let's say, a business person over here. Business person. And the business person speaks a different language. And here we have IT persons, being developers, being testers, and we are trying to communicate. We speak a different language. We don't understand each other. So what, as a result, we came up with a, you might say, what it says here, joint code. let's define this joint language in terms of requirements. So requirements is something that's the idea at least, we write them as such that the business person understands. You say, now I know what you mean. By the way, that means quite often we need additional pictures or diagrams or prototypes to show what it actually means, to explain things. On the other hand, developers, testers also understand what requirements mean. So in requirements engineering, we are creating, this is what we're doing, a common language that both parties, both type of the line can use. That's what requirements engineering is basically about, the joint code. And what we're going to do today, this morning, is to set some rules, to get some ideas. How can we define the joint code, the requirements, in a well way? So it's usable for the business, but also for us as testers. So the next time you are reviewing and you are totally unhappy, I cannot test this is really bad. And someone says, what do you want? Aha, I've got some ideas. That's what I want to get at, okay? So what's a requirement? There are all kinds of definitions, as you can see. It's basically something, a capability, something to which the system must conform. So something the system must do. That's what a requirement is. I want the system to be able to do this. And we have, if we look at requirement specifications, we should have, at least, that's a nice thing to check always, we should always have, let's say, 3 types of requirements. We have what we call functional requirements. They define what the system should do. The product shall produce an updated schedule. That's what the product does. So what? Now, even more difficult for most organizations, we also would like to see non-functional requirements. So how well it's done. Things like performance, or reliability, or usability, or maintainability, or portability, in which configurations must be able to run. These are also requirements, okay? And quite often these are even more difficult to specify ambiguously or testable. Because I don't know how it is in Belarus, but I've seen people writing down, the product should be easy to use. What does that mean? You got to be kidding me, right? But okay, I see people smiling. Hopefully smiling means I recognize that. Okay, but things like that you have to specify. It's not easy. The product shall determine in less than whatever. And the third step is what they say, there are typically also constraints. A restriction on the scope of design. It shall be able to run on this platform. It's like there are constraints to this product. You can think about whatever you want, you can design whatever you want, but it shall run on these platforms. It shall comply to these standards. By the way, there are some chairs. I don't do anything, but you are allowed to sit over here if you want. No, you stay. Okay. Up to you. So there are 3 types of requirements. Yeah. A main principle, and this is always the difficult part, there is not one solution. Because you might say the requirements process or the way you document requirements is very context dependent. If there was one solution, I would have a very simple workshop. I would give you the solution, say, good luck, go, and I'll see you again next year, or someone else. But there is not. And there is also, if you look at Agile, for instance, Agile says, maybe we should consider how much documentation we actually need. And that's a difficult question. How much documentation is enough? And if you're working, for instance, in a team, let's say there is only one Scrum team in your project, 8 people working together in one location in Minsk, with 2 stakeholders, 2 customers who are in the same office. Or, I worked on a TV project recently, and the team was located in Singapore, in Southampton in the UK, in Hamburg in Germany, and in Eindhoven in Holland. That's a very different situation. Then you need a very different level of, and actually stakeholders in this case were based in Brazil, in the US, in Australia, in Asia, and in Europe. Good luck. So we both need requirements, right? The TV project needs requirements, but also the team of 8 needs requirements. But of course, the level of the requirements are very difficult. Sometimes people say, oh, I've seen this, 2 levels of requirements. User requirements, where they state what the problem is, the user shall be able to. And we answer the project, very formal, in the terms of, and the product shall be able to. It's 2 levels. I worked a lot in the medical industry, and the medical industry is very formal, and that's the way it works sometimes. I'd rather personally say, why not just 1 level? I like that, is to keep it simple as possible. And by the way, when you're talking about requirements and how much documentation is enough, we typically consider how much is enough for the project to develop and to test. I would like to add one, which is very important. And how much documentation is enough to maintain this product for the next 5 years? Because I think this is one which is very, very often forgotten. And we say, the project will only lasts for 3 years. Well, I know, but many products last for 5 years or 10 years or sometimes even longer. And if you don't start documenting enough to maintain at the beginning, then in a few years' time, you're going to test this project? Good luck, because there's no requirements. That happened to me quite often. I mean, you get these legacy projects without enough documentation. I think it's one of the dangers, if you want, from Agile, that we say, no documentation is needed anymore, and we can do everything Agile. But there is a life once it comes down to production. And the life is called maintenance. And the life typically lasts for 2, 3, 4, 5, even longer sometimes. And without having designs, without having requirements in place, challenging. So it depends. There is not one solution, and we'll look at various options today. It depends whether you're Agile, whether you're V-model. I was involved with a project for Dutch bank, Rabobank, where actually the development was outsourced to India. Again, different situation. And of course, that puts all kinds of constraints on how you document the requirements. Because they cannot speak to the product owner. They cannot ask any questions. Well, there were some mechanisms, but more difficult. They have little domain knowledge. There's even a financial impact when it comes back. So, this usually takes an hour or more than an hour, but now I have 2 slides only. The requirements process. I think this is a phase which is quite often forgotten. It starts what I call a kickoff phase. You should do something before you start gathering requirements. And that something is called, do we know what this project is going to achieve? do we have a, let's call it a business case? Because if we don't know what actually the objective is, then anything is okay. We need to constrain ourselves. We need to clearly define the scope. I like it when we start with, and I will come back to that later on, with my ideas, but we have a one-page set of business requirements. That means maybe we have a sort of context diagram saying, okay, we're going to develop a new product, but this is the context, and this is the constraint, these are limits of what we're thinking about. Because otherwise you can go any direction. So it starts by having a clear objective, clear scope. It also starts by taking some time to define and who actually are the stakeholders. A stakeholder analysis, especially if you're having larger projects, larger organizations. Because there's a simple rule, if you miss a stakeholder, or you forget a stakeholder, you are forgetting requirements. It sounds like, of course, but often this is not done and we just go into the requirements engineering. So basically there is a kickoff phase where it's about, do we have everything in place to start doing requirements gathering? That's the next step. And requirements gathering, I like that very much, is not about writing unambiguous requirements, it's about getting the ideas. The first step is, let's get the ideas in place. It's all about, you might say, quantity, and not about quality yet. So if someone says, oh, thanks very much, let's put it on there. Oh, thank you very much, let's put it on there. And we use various requirements gathering techniques. And of course, most popular is interviewing users. But that's, to be honest, it's needed. But interviewing users is not about inventing something new. Because requirements gathering is about defining a new product, a new system. It's about being the best, about doing something new. So typically what's also needed is workshops, is having prototypes in place to get new ideas, to say, oh, that's a good idea. So this is how we can actually conquer the market. So typically in a requirements gathering phase, there are multiple techniques being applied to get the ideas. And talk to the right people, talk to the right stakeholders. Ensure you got functional requirements, but also the non-functional requirements. If security is an issue, talk to the people who actually know about security in your company. And if you're having a new product and there is nothing on performance, ask yourself the question, why is there nothing on performance? Is it not an issue? Does nobody care? Or should I ask someone and go and look? It's almost like a checklist. It's impossible to have requirements, and I've seen this as well. I mean, I've seen requirements documents, and I guess you as well, where there's a 30-page document, and 29 pages are about functionality, and the last page is about, it needs to be fast and easy to use. Good luck. So that's also one. Constraints. And in terms of agile, using that term, what we're doing here is building the backlog. We are now building a list of things we would like to achieve in the next so many weeks, months, or whatever. Once we've done that, so the requirements gathering is done, we move to the next phase. And the next phase we call requirement specification. And of course, I'm already saying that it looks now, it's 1, and then it's 2, and then it's 3. It's not a total linear phase. It may be 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, and then some 3s again, whatever. So it may not be sequential. But the thing is, at some point you say, okay, we got all the ideas, let's now work on these ideas and make a requirement, which is a vague idea, into a, let's call that, a quality requirement. Quality being, it's now a requirement that is unambiguous, that is testable, that is non-compound, that is brief, that is whatever you have as rules. And here we'll talk about later on it helps to have templates in place to specify how do we put these requirements together, that we define rules, that we define or have something like, and how much detail do we need? If 2 relates to building a backlog, this is about refining, backlog grooming, if you want these terms. But very important, we first focus on quantity, and then we move step by step to quality. Four and 5, as I said already, not a linear process, but all these steps are there. At some point, you say, oh, they are good, and I think we got good requirements. Then there still is something like what they call verification. And verification is what you're doing as testers to say, here's the requirement. I think it's a perfect requirement. It's testable, it's unambiguous, it's complete, it's whatever it all is. And you were asked to review that. And say, oh, actually, I'm missing this part. Or this acceptance criteria, I don't understand. Can you please explain? It helps to build better requirements. And there's a validation. A validation means, verification means, is it against our standard, our rules? And validation means, for the users, is this what you need? Am I building the right product? You ask them something, they give you an idea, we elaborate the idea and write it down, say, this is now the new requirement. We have to go back to the product owner, to the user, and say, is this really what you need, what you want? Validation. So there is also somehow, and there are techniques for that, like inspections and walkthroughs, and a verification and validation phase. This is building good requirements. This is building the foundation for a successful project. And once they're in place, there is requirements management. That means we do change management on that. We know how to change. There's traceability to a requirement to test cases if you want. That helps, of course, because if requirements change, test case need to change. That's why I dislike sometimes people come to me and say, I've got all these test cases. Wow, okay, great. We got 500 test cases, which you run every time. And how do they map to the requirements? We have no idea. So if requirements change, which test cases are involved? We don't know. But we have 500 test cases. We need to think about how requirements trace back to test cases. Both manual test cases as automated test cases. Because if we don't know, we have a problem very soon. So said already, we first look for quantity and building a sort of product backlog, and anything is okay to be in the backlog. But once it gets into a, let's say, sprint backlog, the things we're really going to develop, things we are really going to test, we have rules for that. They need to be quality-based. So make sure as a tester, when you are involved, you are commenting and making the right comments at the right period in time. Don't start commenting on a product backlog and say, I can't test this. That's okay, it's just an idea. But later on, when it's part of the sprint backlog, it's when you really need to comment to say, I need to understand this. I need to be able to test this. I need to be testable. That was as I said, a more or less short introduction on requirements. Let's see if you, and you being you, have some ideas. I mean, you've all been, I'm sure, you've all had a lot of experience in who has more than 3 years experience in testing? Okay. More than 1 year experience in testing? Okay. Who has no experience at all? Okay. Okay. So we will help you get along. Okay, no worries. We're going to have a short session where I'm going to ask you I have some fonts for that, but we have to be careful because there's a few more people than I think we agreed on 20 before, but it's a full room, which is okay, by the way. What do you think are good requirements? So basically what we're going to say is, what are the rules for this joint code? So for instance, you could say a requirement needs to be testable. That's a rule, okay? That's a rule for that. So I want you to think of a number of rules together with your friend, your neighbor, for this session, and then we will make together a list of what you think are good requirements. I will comment on that later on, but first it's you who have a go on that. And I think we've already learned that if we only use informal language, so we just use English rather than a format, it's going to be pretty weak. And a nice example is the following. I didn't say he killed his wife. Well, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ways to interpret this very simple language sentence. I didn't say he killed his wife. 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 It's the same sentence, in English. I didn't say he killed his wife. Okay, another one. I didn't say he killed his wife. I mean, what it shows you, and I think this is what I'm getting at here, is if you only have requirements in informal language, without having any rules for that, there's going to be a lot of problems in interpretation. Because this simple sentence, depending on how you read it, is very, very differently read by different people, by different stakeholders. And that is not what you want from requirements, right? So, you have a few minutes, and I will give you a form in a minute for that, is to consider and to think. I would like to say 5 ideas should be possible. What are rules? What are ideas for better or good requirements? Okay? Make groups of 3, 4 is also allowed if you want. Consider the requirements, the sentence, but maybe you also say, well, we need to have a sentence, but also we need to have an ID for that. Or we need to define also this part, or priority, or whatever. Yeah? It could be different attributes. Okay? So I want you to spend, let's say, 5 minutes together with your neighbor or neighbors for that, and I have a form which I will give to each row. Okay? Please. It's this page, the first page. Yeah. If you can work together, yeah. Interesting. Oh, you have one. Okay. Yeah, you can. You want? Yep. For you especially. You are. Okay. Shall we Shall we see what you came up with? For the groups at the back, is it possible to move a little bit more forward? Is that possible? That makes it easier for me to, if you don't want to, you can stay at the back, but it would help for me if you move forward a little bit. And there is space without you coming to the front. I saw some groups that have a long list already. Some were struggling. Okay. It depends, of course, on your own experience, how many things you can think of. What I would like to do now is I will ask the various groups if they can give me one idea. If you say, I have nothing, that's fine. If you think, I have something I don't want to share, too bad. But preferably, I would like to say, if you could say, hey, we've got this idea, I'll put it up there. Okay? So what we're going to do is together make a list of ideas, and I will comment on that later on, but now we're going to make together a list of ideas. What are the rules? What is the standard for good requirements? Okay? Yeah? And I will just, and if you say, I have nothing, or you are afraid to talk, but preferably if you have one, please mention only one, because if you are the first one and you mention 5, then the rest has no other. So only one. Yeah? Do you have an idea to share? Okay. Let me see. Okay. I have no idea what it is, but you can translate. We have a translator here as well, online. Maybe. The microphone. Can you mention the first one to me? Is it possible in English? Is it in English? Hang on. I need my glasses. It's in English. Oh, yeah. See? Okay. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. It's in English, actually. Okay, very good. Yeah. Okay, the first idea that you say, it is measurable, right? Okay. So the first rule we have, we should be able to measure it. And I think by measure, I'm not sure, but I think you also mean we should be able to test it, right? It's very close, because it needs to be specific. Okay, measure. Okay, thank you. It was in English, sorry for that. My mistake. No glasses. We go to group 2. Comprehensive. What do you mean by comprehensive? Okay. Complete? Complete, whatever complete means, by the way. Yeah, okay. So it needs to be, second thing is, it needs to be complete. So the set of requirements, I think that's what you mean. I'm trying to understand what you say. Needs to cover, be complete, be comprehensive for this new product. Okay? Yeah? Okay, thank you. We have group 3 here somewhere.
It should be detailed.
Detailed, okay. It should be. This is, by the way, a difficult one. Well, they're all difficult ones, because what is the right level of detail? But let's put down, there should be a certain level of detail. And I would like to add, in general, the level of detail should be more or less the same for all the requirements. Because you don't want some very detailed and others, okay? But detailed, good, yeah. Okay. I think we have a big group of 6 here or not? No, 2 groups. Any more ideas?
They have to be understandable and interpreted.
They should be understandable between
All members of the team?
Understandable. Yeah, that's good. Understandable. I'm happy. Good, yeah, understandable. Do you have one? Okay, and another one coming up.
It should define the one thing just a single.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Feature.
it should define only one thing. So what I often say in terms of requirements engineering, it should not be compound. It should not have multiple aspects, no ands, no or, one thing only, right? Yeah. If you want, he wants to call it atomic, but so I will put one thing only. Non-compound atomic. I'm flexible today, for now. So what we're doing, and this is important, we are defining rules for our requirements. Okay? And of course, I will come back later on, having only the name is not good enough, because you say detail, what do you mean by detail? We need to specify and define what we mean by those. But it helps. It helps if we say, these are the rules, these are ideas, how to make better requirements. Okay. Let me move on and see what comes. Oh, sorry, question, please.
Сценарий должен был тест выполнимым.
So the test should be the test should be
Should be testable.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Reachable.
Testable, yeah. Testable. Okay, sorry. That's the thing. I will add testable. Yeah, sure. Let me see if we get one or two more on the list.
Наличие блок-схем.
there should be a block
I'll
scheme.
get the translation.
There should be a block scheme. Okay.
Block shames.
Sorry?
Block shames. Included.
Pictures.
Pictures.
Okay, yeah, pictures. Yeah,
Kартинки.
good. See, together we can make it. There should be, I like that. There should be supporting. By the way, and I'm making comments as we go along, it's good to have pictures, but the pictures are probably supporting and not the requirements themselves. That's the difference, eh? It's like they explain the requirements, they ensure for more understanding. It's the same when you make a prototype. They help to understand better what is needed, what is there, but it's not the requirements as such. Okay? Yeah, but supporting pictures, I like that. Good. Yes. I will just go backwards a little more. One more.
Требование должно быть обязательно.
The requirements should be obligatory. The requirements should be obligatory. Obligatory.
It should be shall. We should use, yes. Okay, I like that. Yes. We must use the word. It's over there. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay like this. No worries. This is good. Yeah. Otherwise, I have to go put this on. We have a translator over there. It's okay for now. Use shall. I like it very much because, if I may, yes, I'll come back. I like it very much because if we use, sorry?
Yeah, and second one, it's it should be a clean structure. When you create your requirements,
Yes?
it should be a really clean structure, how you determine it. It's inside the document. Is it clean? No?
Well, are you saying that because it should be, the document itself should be clearly structured?
Yeah.
Okay. You shall a structured document. Very good comment, I think, because it means what we don't want is let's say a long list of requirements and then we have no idea what's going on, right? I think that's what you're getting at. Yes, very good one. I also like the word shall. Yes, I'll come back in a minute. We're now on a roll, right? I like the word shall because the word shall is, I think you said that. Sometimes you see a document and it's like, the document might, the document may, it shall, it should. And then I know, what's the difference? Is there a difference? And it helps to define clearly what we mean. So, yeah, good. We have one more. Yeah?
Требование должно относиться к будущему времени.
So it should be about our future. It should be in future tense, not in the.
We cannot change the past.
Okay, okay. They should. Well, may I add something to? I would rephrase that, if I may. I would like to say the requirements must have added value. If we look at the past and develop a product which is the same as we have today, why? So added value is it must be something new for the future. Okay with that? Yes? Okay. Added value. Okay. Please.
We must identify stakeholders.
Hey, there must be, yeah, good. A clear or a stakeholder. May I put something with that? I would very much like, yes, you're next. Okay, scene. Okay, good. I would like to put, in addition, the word source. What I mean by that is, it helps if you have a requirement and you know who actually set this. That may be a stakeholder, but maybe a change request from a customer. Because later on, when you are elaborating requirements and you have a question, I'm not sure what it means. You should know who delivered the question, and then it helps to know who the source is. Because I've been in many requirements brainstorm sessions, and you are together for a full hour or sometimes a half a day, and then at the end of, let's say, 1 hour, someone says, who got this requirement? And even after an hour, sometimes you don't even know. So documenting the stakeholder, documenting the source, is a great idea. At the back.
Includes non-functional requirements.
Yeah, good. It relates a little bit to complete, isn't it? So what we're saying is we want also non-functional requirements. Not only functional. Oh, gosh, 4 or 5. I will have 3 more and then we have to move on. But we are building, yeah, good. Here at the front. Can we do this one first? And then at the back.
So we think that requirements should be consistent. It means that there is no contradiction between every item of requirement.
Consistent. Very good. Yes, I like that one. Yes. No contradiction and consistency in many ways, but good. Yes. At the back there was one. Oh, here? Yeah, please.
Требования должны быть не противоречивые.
The requirements have to be consistent, non-contradicting. Non-ambiguous.
Sorry?
Non-ambiguous.
One meaning? So one meaning?
Да, не
Yeah, clear. If I may put down the words clear and concise. So to the point, if you want. Yeah? Is that okay? Yeah? Clear and concise. And it relates, of course, to the word, it needs to be unambiguous, but whatever that means. But clear and concise, one meaning only. Very good. Last one.
It must be written by people who know how to write requirements.
It must be written by people who write, yes.
Because often, almost times, people doesn't know how to develop or something else, and they write wrong things.
I would put down written well, whatever well means, okay? No, but it's an idea, okay? So you have now come up with a list, and I will have a list later on. But this is a very good list. We're not always saying, hey, they must be measurable, must be complete. Maybe you have use cases, and that means for every use case, there need to be a number of requirements, as an example. We have to have a level of detail, for instance, that allows us to derive test cases from the requirement. I'm elaborating on what you said. Needs to be understandable to the stakeholders, and the stakeholders also include developers and testers. One thing only. So non-compound or atomic, you said. Eh? We don't want requirements that have an and or an or, because then it gets very confusing. Needs to be testable. Is it clear from the requirements what the expected result will be? Example. Supporting by pictures. It helps if a requirements document has supporting pictures, because the pictures, I think, help especially to understand better what is meant. Use the word shall. Basically what you're saying is use one way of writing all the requirements in the same way. And shall means you have to, yeah, okay. Have a structured document. I like that very much. We don't want a long list of requirements and then have fun. They need to be organized in some way. Written in a well way. Every requirement needs to have added value. That makes actually say, if we have a business case, the document, we need to be saying, does this requirement have added value in the context of this business case? That's basically what you want, right? For every requirement, we need to know who is the stakeholder or what is the source. So in case I have any questions, so I can go to that stakeholder or go to the source and see what is additional information. Because otherwise what will happen is, I will start assuming. And you don't want that. Assuming is a very dangerous thing here. It relates to complete, but it's explicit. We must make sure that we have functional requirements and non-functional requirements. And also the non-functional requirements must be measurable and testable, of course. The requirements must be consistent. They must not contradict each other, right? They must also be clear and concise. This relates also to being, I would say, unambiguous to some extent. What we just did is we defined together a set of rules for requirements, okay? And this is one of the things which I think you need in an organization. You need to be able to say, okay, what are good requirements? A good requirement is one that covers all these things. And if you have rules in place, any violation to a rule is actually a defect in the requirements. Because we are starting to define, we're not going to say, what are good requirements? Smart or invest. These are too vague, with all due respect. We need to have more than just that in place. Okay? This is a good step. What I'd like you to do, in the same Teams as you just did now, is to turn the page. And on the back, you would find a radio watch requirement specification. We are a bit behind schedule, but we'll see how it goes. Again, 5 minutes to find defects. But important here, you have just defined rules. If you find a defect, it can only be a defect if you violate a rule. You cannot just say to me later on, oh, this is not good. Not good? What does it mean? Which rule is violated? Okay? 5 minutes together with your team, see where you can find some issues here. Mag hem meenemen hoor. Mag hem meenemen als je het een keer wilt gebruiken. Okay, let us see what you have found and how you are now happy with the requirements, or non-happy, or totally unhappy, or I don't know. Happy? No, not happy. Not happy. A bit happy? Not a bit happy. Very unhappy? Yes, okay, yes, a clear yes. Unfortunately, normally, as I said, we do this a little bit longer, and then I start asking people, so what did you find? But important, you should find something. This is an important lesson learned already. You can only find a comment if it's a violation to the rule. That's an important one. You cannot say, I don't like this, because then it gets very vague, and then you have the tester saying, I can't, I'm not usable. It must be, I can't measure this. It's not complete, I'm missing something. It's not level of detail, it's not understandable. It should be one thing only. It should be testable, and there's no supporting pictures. Use the word shall, whatever. Only a violation to these rules, and these rules are actually not only for testers, they are also for the people who are writing them. So we can train the people to say, please write requirements using the following rules. Okay? As an example, maybe you found the same things. I didn't know which rules you had, but some examples. The first one may not even be a requirement, it's more like a business objective. Okay? You didn't have this rule, but I like it when requirements have IDs. So they can say, this relates to requirement number X, instead of saying, on line 7, the third bullet, very confusing. In this case, there are no IDs. Inconsistently, they are using the word watch and radio watch. Is that the same thing or different? I don't know. Inconsistent. There are some, I would say, vague, meaning probably not clear, not concise sentences, because people don't like to wake up the other, really? They are using the word shall, the word will, the word must, the word can. Is there a difference and why all these words are used? So good recommendation. They should have gone to one word only. Yeah. Someone says one thing only. Aha. The much shall be small and lightweight. That's two things. Two requirements. There is something which wasn't on your list, because a requirement should be a requirement, not a solution yet, not a design. And here it says, actually, must not contain any iron parts. That's already thinking about a solution. There's an or again, compound. Easy accessible. Oh, we can test that. Yeah, it's very testable. Not. Vague, easy to use. I have no idea. But I mean, I know we're now like, I'm very unhappy and we can't do this. In real life, often we get documents to this level of quality. May. What does may mean? May only be operated. I have no idea. So that you can see, based on your rule set, the rules you defined, you can review. This is like a checklist if you want. A checklist, and this is important, that you agreed with developers, that you agreed with business analysts, and say, these are our rules, how we should write our requirements. And then, with this checklist in hand, you will find defects in a requirements document. And sometimes you will find a defect, you are unhappy with something, and it's not in the rule set. Then probably you have to go back to the rules and say, hang on guys, do we need an additional rule for this? Or is this okay for us? I don't know. Sometimes as a tester you want more quality than the rest of the team. We should have an agreed rule set. Okay. Yes, please.
When we say must not contain any iron parts, do we consider that a restriction? Because in the beginning you said functional, non-functional restrictions.
If it's meant here as a constraint, I'm okay. But the way it's written here, because it's almost at the end of the sentence, it looks like a solution to the small and lightweight. If that's how it's written here. If it's a constraint, because we're not allowed to use that for whatever reasons, it could be correct. I don't know. We probably have to go back to the stakeholder and say, is it a constraint or is it just an idea you've got? If he says to us, it's an idea I've got, it's wrong. If it's a constraint for whatever reason, it could be a constraint. Yes. Good question.
Maybe it's better to formulate this in a positive way, but not in a negative, because it shouldn't contain any iron parts, but what parts should it contain, actually?
But then again, if you say it should contain these parts, you are going to a solution.
Yeah.
And the solution is hereafter. In the requirements phase, I think what the requirements is, I want a radio watch that is small, full stop. I want a radio watch that is lightweight, full stop. Later on, we will have a design team who will think, what's the best way to make a lightweight watch? And that should be the order. And then we, of course, can still go to the stakeholder and say, this is our ideas, what do you think about the ideas? But let's first get the requirements clear and not mix requirements with solutions, unless, you're right, unless it's a constraint for whatever reason.
But I wanted to say that maybe it's a common thing for the requirements missing on this board. I mean, to formulate it in a positive way.
Yeah, I agree. Because if you have not, then you get test cases not, and not is not expected. You know, it gets very confusing. Yeah. It's like a decision table. If you make every condition in a positive way, it's much easier to understand. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We have, well, I said 30 minutes, but I have 10 minutes. But we can manage 10 minutes. In the last 10 minutes, first of all, I got the idea of rules. I want to give you some ideas to take home, some things to consider if you are thinking about how to do better requirements at home. Some of them are already mentioned, and some may be more new, you might say. The first one, and where's my clicker? Here's my clicker. We have already mentioned. The first one is, if you do requirements engineering, if you start a requirements process, you start with a kickoff phase and you have a clear business requirements document. It helps to know the scope of the work. If not, everything is allowed and it will go out of scope. So I think the first thing I always say, do we have a higher level document? There was a rule from someone earlier who said added value. You can only know if it's added value if you know the objective of the project. if you know the scope of the new system. So I would say number one is very much important. We need, and you can use the word business case, you can use the word business requirements, you can use the word vision document, whatever you like. I don't mind, but there must be a one, and I like one page A4, by the way. If you cannot write on one page A4 what is you're trying to achieve, I don't think you know what you're trying to achieve. So I want a one page A4 business case, business requirements document. If that's missing, then, and you have, someone said unstructured, and you have a long list of requirements and you don't know what you're going to do, it's going to be a mess. So number one, I put down, we need business case. And the business case is preferably supported. I'm doing a few slides at the same time now all of a sudden. Supported by also defining the scope, but also having a context diagram. This is the work we're going to look at, and these are the surrounding systems. Okay? Again, it helps to identify, is this requirement in scope? Are the requirements complete, someone says. Okay? It also helps to have the requirement someone has. I like pictures. I like pictures too. So a context diagram is a very simple diagram, but it helps people understand what it is we are trying to do, how it fits in our portfolio of products. So I would say number one is a business case, but I would like the business case to be supported by a context diagram. Another comment was made. I want the document to be structured. I think some over there somewhere, structured document. Very, very important. What you don't want, this is one of the comments we get very often from people working in Agile. They say, in Agile, we are missing the bigger picture. If there are 8 teams working, and you're working in one team, you are lost. What are you doing? And what you don't want is that there are requirements all over, and they're all on the same level, and you don't know how they fit in the bigger picture. So it helps to define a structure. That, for instance, based on a business case and context diagram, you say, what are the use cases for this new product? Or maybe you say, let's use epics, higher level user stories to structure. There are different ways to do that. But I would like to see that the requirements are structured based on something. And use cases is a great way to do it, because this is a use case, this is a let's say, business process if you want. And what are the requirements you could write down for the business process? You could say, I will structure it by epics, which are higher level user stories. I'm also okay with that. But I want a structure document so we can actually see also the bigger picture. Hey, I'm taking this requirement, has to do with this use case, or this use case step even. So my second recommendation is structure. And if I may say something here, use either use cases or epics. And to me, I know Agile is not so much use case fan, but I like use cases. You know why? Because most of our stakeholders understand use cases. They are easy to understand, they're easy to read. And I think the idea of requirements was that we have a document we both understand, right? Here's an example of structuring. We have a theme, frequent flyer, we have epics, and within epics we have user stories. So basically we are making you may drill down to requirements. So make sure, business case, and have a structure for your requirements. That's what I'm saying is the second one. What we're trying to do, hopefully you recognize in the beginning, when someone asked me, when I said, I can't test this, the question was, well, so what do you want? I want a business case. I want a context diagram. I want a structure. That's what I want. It will help me to do a better job as a tester. And the third thing I would recommend to consider is to use, I call them requirements cards. Of course, you have to always have the sentence. The sentence is like, the product shall be able to, or as a user I want, whatever. But it also helps to know what is the requirements type. Is the non-functional requirements, which non-functional? Is the constraint? Is the functional requirements? Because for instance, if I put them down like this, I say, let me search for all the performance requirements. So I can make one good test for that. It would have been nice, you said just before, is iron parts a design or is a constraint? If we would have used requirements type, I would have been very clear to me. Now it's a question mark. What do we mean? Priority needs to be set. That's an attribute. I need to know how important is it for the business or business value if you want. The source we talked about, you remember? So basically I'm saying is if you want to define requirements, consider to not only document the one sentence, but also consider to document a number of attributes to that requirement. It helps. Now, don't go back to your company next week and saying, oh, I have a tutorial for Erik, so we need to have requirements number, type, priority, use case, rationale, source, criteria, size, and we need to have examples. No. What I'm saying is, these are all the things which are possible. But go back to your company and see what would have added value in our context, and decide which attributes you should actually start documenting. Consider the ones that are important and do it. I'd rather have to say, we'll do 3 more, and we'll do these 3 consistently, with quality, with dedication, than to decide on 10, because 10 is way too much. So instead of having only the requirement, consider having, I say cards, but by cards I mean document additional attributes of requirements. You should know the source. You should know the priority. You should know the type of requirement. It should have a number. To me, these are vital things. Here I explained very briefly. This is one we can talk about for an hour at least. There is a notion nowadays in requirements engineering, and not much nowadays, but it has been there for a while, to define what they call acceptance criteria. Sometimes it is pretty hard to define a requirement to such a level of detail that it is fully testable. There are still questions open. Despite the fact that you've done concise and then you thought, but what if this, and what happens if this, and what happens if this, and testers are good at these things. Well, one answer would be, for every question you have, you write an additional requirement. But that gives so many more requirements, which is, I would say, undoable. So there is a new notion that actually, for requirements to which there are still open issues, there are still questions, that you write, sometimes they're called fit criteria, sometimes they're called criteria, a list of additional rules around such a requirement. As an example, I think I have one on the slide. I think yes. A requirement could be, as a student, I want to be able to buy a parking pass so I can get to school quickly. That's a requirement, right? As a tester, you may have some ideas. What happens if the payment isn't sufficient? So we have a criteria. What happens if, can he do it multiple times, only one per month? But so basically you get a number of additional sentences. And these sentences to me could be written in, I would say, normal English. There are people who say, let's look at them in a very formal way, but the formal way to me is quite often not so understandable to our stakeholders. And usually writing them on in normal English, UK, US English, is much happier. So I very much, and then when you say, is it concise, is it clear, is it unambiguous, don't look only at the requirement, but look at the whole set, the requirement together with the acceptance criteria. Because the whole set is actually the requirement. And the whole set should be testable. The whole set should be clear enough. So my recommendation number 4 is use or introduce acceptance criteria. And there is a rule, well, not a rule, there is a guideline that a maximum of around 5 to 8 acceptance criteria is allowed for a requirement. If you have 20, you probably need to say there's 2 requirements here, right? So it cannot, but 5 to 8 is still okay. 5 to 8 interpretations or things to add to a requirement to make it clear to all what we're trying to do. It gives a lower number of requirements and it's very helpful to make things testable, understandable to our stakeholders. It's a very good and very strong concept. This is a simple one, yet an important one. It comes back to what you were saying earlier, use the word shall. Make sure you use a template. I don't care which template you use. I couldn't care less, but use a template so that all your requirements are written in the same format. So we have no discussion whether it should be must or can or will or should or shall. And there is one which is the stakeholder shall be able to, fine. The user story one, I'm fine. The product, I don't care. As long as they are consistent, because consistency actually improves readability, improves conciseness, improves everything. And there are also templates, by the way, available on the internet. If you say, but now I have to write a performance requirement. I cannot use this one. Correct. But you can use the internet and there are templates for usability. There are templates for performance. And if you define those, it becomes easier to write those. So my recommendation is, look for templates, decide on one. I don't really care which one, but use one and use it all the time. So use templates. And I'm adding also for non-functional requirements, because that's important. These are more difficult quite often. Look on the internet, say, is there a template for a performance requirement? Are there templates for reliability requirements? And they are. And then decide on one, say, if we have a performance requirement, this is how we write them. This one we talked about already. Define the rules for your requirements. A rule set is like an agreement. This is how we work. If you review it, any violation to a rule is a defect. If we have rules, we have less discussion. It becomes more objective. What you don't want is that the testers, I can't test this, it's not good enough, and it's always a fight. It shouldn't be a fight. If you say, it's not non-compound, there's a violation, okay, understand. That's the way it should be. So we need to move to rule-based reviewing. And You can see here some rules I typically use, and many of those you've come up with as well. Valuable, you said. Uniqueness, consistency, I think someone said. Language, by the way, wasn't mentioned. I always end up in projects with a discussion about UK or US English. Come on, you got to be... Just define rule and we're done. No design. Have a knowledge person defined. By the way, if you start working with rules, do not just identify them as one word, but define what it is you mean by the rule. Because the one word is typically has different interpretations. So we want identify and, very important, define or specify your rules. Here are more detailed, brief, unambiguous, priority we want, non-compound, needs to be independent, technically achievable is one way I use sometimes, testable. So number 6 would be set and define rules. We should have ended at 12 o'clock. It's now 12:05, so we are, I think, more or less on time, isn't it? If a project is only 1 week late, we are very happy. So this is a project 1 week late. I think we're all very happy, I hope at least. Here again are the things I said before, and I put them on there. One is important to remember as well. If you start working on requirements as a tester, initially it's all about quantity. Only in the second phase, remember, it's about quality. So in the initial phase, you're okay with everything as a tester. And you embrace all the ideas. It's only later, at a later stage, you say, okay, now I have to do and look at whether we have a business case, context diagram. Is there a structure based on use cases, epics? Do we use cards, attributes? Do we have acceptance criteria defined to elaborate on a requirement? Do we have templates, also for non-functionals? Do we have rules in place? And does our requirement adhere to the rules? In case you have any further questions or things you want to ask and I can help, there is an email address. Happy to assist if possible. We started this morning with saying, as a tester, you are quite often unhappy with requirements. Remember? That's how we started. And I said, well, the answer cannot be, I don't know either. The answer should be, hey, I've got some ideas how we can better write requirements, how we can better structure requirements. And you did a brilliant job by defining a rule set earlier. It was a very good rule set already. Thank you very much for that. And there are some further ideas on this slide. Also, if you have questions, I'll be around the entire day, so feel free to contact me. Thank you very much. Thank you.